Hello all, this is Chris Hersiadis, and it is Aqua Agitators, where the real water experts take the stand. Today, I have the pleasure of hosting my good friend Gaetane. Good morning, how are you?
Good morning, Christos. I'm very well, and thank you so much for having me on your program. I'm really pleased
The
to be
pleasure
with you
is
this morning.
the pleasure is all ours. So, would you mind introducing yourself a little bit and what you do in the water space?
Sure, thank you, Christos. So I'm an economist by background, and I got actually in I got into the water sector a few years ago, like 25 years ago. And it was actually when the environmental policies in Brussels were starting to be drafted, and I thought that's very exciting, and that's an exciting space to be in. So I decided that my objective and mission in life would be actually to make a sort of a modest contribution on how to improve the environment. And I also worked. So I spent a bit of time in between Brussels and the GRC in Seville. And then I went off to work for the UK water industry.
Okay.
And that was interesting as well because that was a mix between looking at the environment and how the water sector and the water industry can improve the environment, as well as how can we make water affordable for the consumer. So it was always, this two key objectives that we had in mind. So obviously I was working, and the joy of working with the water industry in the UK is that you have different setups, between really, fully private up to public, right? So I could not say
But you were always
yes.
trying to improve things, right? To optimize the situation that you were in.
Absolutely. I mean, for me, like it was always an objective to work in favor of the environment as well as making sure that the water industry could keep investing in infrastructure, right? And to keep water affordable to the consumer. So that's what I had in mind whenever we were actually discussing the environmental directives. And following that, um, I decided to get back to France after 20 years outside France. And I then became the managing director of a water innovation cluster.
Hmm.
And I worked with startups, SMEs, large companies, and academics.
Which I
And
can vouch is not easy in the water space.
no, that's right. Nonetheless, it was quite interesting because actually we had to put together academics and the industry together to actually come up with innovative solutions. And to give you a practical story about this, at the time, because actually the cluster was located on the Loire Valley,
Hmm.
in the Loire Valley, we decided to work again, around water resources this time. So it was less about water services, but it was more about water resources management. And we set up actually a industrial value chain on environmental monitoring and environmental metrology. And that was very new at the time. So everybody thought that I was actually crazy to get into this. But we started creating a group, so with academics and SMEs and large companies and startups. And we actually created projects on new sensors for the environment. So the sensors that actually you see today
Hmm.
started off 15 years ago when we started that project around environmental monitoring. So it's nice to see actually where we started and now where we have landed.
It must have been a big journey. Eh?
Yeah, it was quite interesting, but as I said, everybody thought that I was absolutely crazy to go down that line. But I like the fact that sometimes I can be crazy because that push, the borders forward as well.
It's interesting
And
people
during,
that always push the borders of what we are doing.
well, that actually has been my motivation, like I always wanted to do things differently so that we can push the boundaries and sometimes a bit, like in the nicest possible way, shake up things, in the water sector. Yeah. So during that time, we created like a 20 million bulk of projects. So we created that value chain on environmental monitoring, and we created an ecosystem of companies where, I mean, during which I learned as well that actually startups at the time had two issues. One was getting funding, by the private. We had access to public funding quite a lot in France, so that was not the issue. The issue was how to access private funding. And the other issue was actually how you deploy water innovations in the water sector. Because it was like 10 years ago, and now everybody talks about water innovations. But back, 10 years, that was not the case.
I would say that we still talk a lot now, but we do very little.
That's right. Nonetheless, compared to 10 years ago,
No, the sequel was
I
even
think
worse.
things are progressing, but you're absolutely right. And I'm going to come on to that in a minute. So when I left actually the cluster, I decided that my next mission in life would be to work on these two aspects, funding and deployment. So I went to work for an investment fund for a year to get acquainted with venture capital. So I did that in France. And I realized that actually the venture capital area was not necessarily matching with what the water startups would need.
Hmm.
So that's why I decided after that, to cut a long story short, to set up the European WaterTech Accelerator.
Yeah.
So I'm the co-founder now of the European WaterTech Accelerator. I've got another co-founder called Jacob Tompkins, who is located in the UK.
Hmm.
And the two of us decided actually to set up the European WaterTech Accelerator based on what I said, and on the fact that, unfortunately, in the water sector, we don't have any European water champions yet. So we have large water utilities, we have large water tech companies. We don't have yet any unicorn in water.
And why do you think is that? At
It's
least
a
in Europe.
combination of, yeah, it's a combination of several factors. One is up to very recently, the private funding going to water startups was not enough actually to enable water startup to scale. But this is changing, and we can discuss it if you like. That's number one. A second factor, and this is my own analysis, right? This is not from books or from big studies. This is just me working in the water sector with
But
my
I believe
experience.
you.
So this is just based on my experience. I think a second factor is the market um, was very lucky to have, or has been very lucky to have, large water utilities, and being located in France, of course, like the Suez, the Veolia, the SOR, and the alike, have been very good at promoting what we had called the École Française de l'eau,
Hmm.
so the French School of Water. So we were actually pioneer in terms of water resources management, in terms of water innovations, and I'm sure, the Dutch people would actually challenge me on this. nonetheless, I think that's a factor. And when you have good practices, good technologies, you tend to think that these are going to last forever. And sometimes you don't take into account that the world is changing, that new stakeholders are coming onto the market, that you have new challenges. And one big challenge that we were not talking so much about is obviously climate change
Yeah.
and the fact that we are facing many challenges now, like water scarcity. Even in areas you would not think about in the UK, they are lacking water.
Yeah, in Germany, in the Netherlands, who knew 10 years ago?
So absolutely. So it's not just, southern countries, sorry, lacking water.
Mhm.
It's now the whole of Europe lacking water.
The problem with water, the way I see it, is that one, we always see it as a commodity, which is heavily subsidized by the states, and this makes the established companies feel very safe in this little niche commercial space that they occupy, and this has gone on for decades, and not allowing them to get hungry per se, at least the European entities, I would say, the big entities, in comparison to the ones on the other side of the pond. Yeah. Or even to the east. Yeah. Like India or China, we're practically left behind as, as a tech space in Europe because we got pretty comfortable where we are. And as you said, there are definitely challenges ahead of us. We are facing already these challenges, and many entities keep their head in the sand. That's the way I see it.
Well, obviously the status quo and the fact that you can open the tap and you have water is not are not incentives for creating disruptive innovations. And what we see, and it's not just in water, innovations have always come from either, like a big challenge or no choice. And if you take Singapore, obviously, like they needed to be innovative because they are dependent on other countries for their water as well.
Yep.
Yeah. So and obviously in Europe, you open the tap and you have water. So you don't really ask yourself until you get in the crisis whether or not
Should we wait to
you.
get to the crisis point to react?
Well, sometimes you need to be in front of the wall to see the wall. And I don't necessarily agree with this approach. Nonetheless, sometimes you need to reach that point so that people realize that maybe we need to do things, differently. And that's not my way of thinking. That's not my way of doing.
Yeah.
But I think in the water sector, if I want to be a little provocative, that's the way it has been until very recently.
Yeah, that's for that.
And another factor is obviously European directives and European regulations, which have pushed the sector to innovate, in
Very slowly.
particular in wastewater treatment. Yeah, and the fact that obviously now we have all these emerging compounds, micropollutants, um, again, new challenges. Actually, wastewater is the hidden resource, kind of, like we talk a lot about drinking water, about tap water. And the fact that, as I said, you open the tap and you have water, but we don't talk much about wastewater. And wastewater is actually an opportunity for innovation,
Yeah.
for creating new business models. And again, this is something which is not very much talked about. So there's a lot of technological innovations. I personally think that the water sector will have to be innovative um, in the business model side of things as well.
So essentially, where you see more value in innovation is in the treatment of wastewater and potential recovery of valuable contaminants that can create new revenue streams.
Yes, yes, indeed. I do believe in this. And startups have really emerged, I would say, like 15 years ago. Yeah, I think if we talk about trends, and obviously the first trend was on technological innovations.
Mhm.
Yeah, so created by regulations, created by the fact that member states and the European Union or the European countries have seen now that we need to be more innovative to face the challenges that we've just discussed. But I also take innovation as an opportunity, and that's what I say to the startups that I work with, or the startups which are in the European WaterTech Accelerator. Indeed.
How many you have in your portfolio right now?
So far, we have five.
Hmm.
And our objective, in fact, and that's where we are a bit different from other accelerators, we want to accelerate only 25 to 30 companies
Okay.
to make them European water champions.
How long has Water Accelerator been going now?
Well, we actually started during the COVID period.
Not
So
only.
I would say up and running. It's been like 2 years. Yeah,
No,
really
still it's
full
impressive.
speed. Yeah,
Yeah, to
full
already
speed.
take care to grow so much.
Yeah,
Um,
and yeah, please do.
please, please.
No, I would say, the journey has been interesting. And as I said, the reason why we have launched and we have established the European WaterTech Accelerator is because we understand now the gaps and the difficulties that the startups have in scaling, in growing fast and in scaling. And we want to address these gaps. So we don't have a book, where we say, oh, you should follow this and you should follow that, and you will be successful. Our approach is very much tailor-made.
Hmm.
So each company gets its own acceleration program. And we think that by acting on the gaps and the difficulties, then we might increase chances of companies actually to scale and go beyond Series A.
Yeah.
So that's why now what we are learning is in 99% of the cases, or even in 100% of the cases, the technology is very good.
Hmm.
What we need to act upon is on the way that the company will develop. So our first criteria is we look at the team. um, we look at how the team is structured, the ambition of the company, the vision of the company, the value proposition, the product market fit. And one thing we have realized is that startups do not always understand that Europe is not one market,
Yeah.
but it is actually 40 different markets.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think that's an important aspect, is this understanding of the water sector that we bring as well.
And this is why I always say, okay, not every technology will save the world, but there is enough commercial space for every technology to be commercially successful.
Yes.
Yeah, not everybody will be a hero. Yeah, but everybody can put a small, let's say, brick on the wall.
Yes. That's right. You're absolutely right. And there is space for everyone. What will make the difference is the way you will approach the market, and that's why the business model is very important, because that's where the difference will be
So,
also.
based on your 25-year experience, which it's remarkable. What are the major issues with startups? What are they mostly doing wrong?
I would not say doing wrong. I would say that they need to work upon now. First of all, is the product market fit, because usually the technology, a technology is developed without really understanding what the market wants, or what the market would need, because you can create that need as well. It doesn't mean that you need to respond to the market. So to sum up, that idea is the product market fit, first of all.
Hmm.
A very important aspect, 80% of the startup failure is not related to the product. It is related to the team. So how you build your team and the profiles that you're going to hire are extremely important, because the team will be asset number one. All right. And in the water space, and this is changing, because I would also want to give good news,
Okay.
uh, that the water startups have been underfunded, right? There was not enough money going to water startups.
Okay. Is it though a bit also a problem with startups, and having worked with innovation all my 8+ years in the industry, I see similar problems, and
Mhm.
definitely one of them is the box approach that many startups have, that they don't provide enough information about their products. They work in silo without hearing the feedback from the industry or the system integrators, and they just keep doing their own thing in fear of someone copying their idea. Is that also your experience?
For me, I mean, my experience is startups need to understand or need to do more work when they start developing a technology. They need to talk to the market much more. And the market needs to express, I think, it's a collective effort.
Hmm.
So it's no one's, one single, let's say, group um, responsibility. The startups need to interact more with the market. The market needs to be clear about what they need. And the market needs to stop just piloting over and over again technologies. They need to say, okay, we will pilot that technology, and if that technology works, then I will deploy it. Because it's very, the timeline between a startup in terms of cash flow, if we get into the details, and the market reaction to it, obviously, it doesn't match.
Hmm.
So there needs to be a commitment from both sides, and supported by the venture capitalists, the seed funders, the corporate venture, so the investment, which also should say, if that pilot works, then I will put money into your company so that you can scale quickly. Because we talk about the long sales cycle, we talk about, and I know that, nonetheless, we need to get into a virtual cycle where everybody says, okay, I'll do my bit to make it work, right? So everybody needs to change culture, basically.
It's not easy to move mountains, eh? But how do we attract more investments, more venture capital into the water space, at least in the European one?
Well, the good news is that now in the accelerator, we get more interest from climate tech, from circular economy, venture capitalists. And um, they want to know more about the water investment space, the water tech space, primarily because they see the crisis. So now they want to contribute to solve that crisis. So interestingly enough, they don't come to us necessarily to say, oh, I want, like a return on investment, like X, Y, or Z, in terms of multiples. It is about, I want to do my share. I want to do my share on, like to contribute to solve the water crisis from a climate change point of view, from a circular economy point of view. So as a result of that, we see more and more climate tech funds.
Hmm.
If you look at the news, like if you look at the investment funds newsletter, you see at least, once a week, a new climate tech fund. Even Microsoft has a climate tech fund. Yeah. And Google is interested in climate tech. I mean, even outside the water sector, we have new tech funds. So as a result of that, we're going to have more water, and everybody wants to do its share now in water.
And they should, and this is why I'm trying also to promote from my side the concept of ethical water, yeah,
Mm-hmm.
which goes according to the best practices of water management, yeah, in order
Yes,
to secure water resources and water reuse. Uh,
yes,
uh, but I hope we are not too late and we're not going to
I
hit the
hope so
wall
too.
first and then try to find the solution. That's hopefully with initiatives like yours, it's easier for investment to see the value of water innovation.
Yes. I mean, our added value is obviously to help startups grow. And it's not going to happen, just, like in 6 months. And so again, it is a collective effort. And that's why we want to work with startups, which is our core activity. And we want to share with them our experience and how to address the gaps that we commonly see in the sector when it comes to startups. And we discussed some of them, like the product market fit, the team, uh, how you grow in control without hitting the wall of cash flow and only having, 3 months runway in terms of cash flow. Um, that's number one. As an accelerator, we are also now designing actions to work with the market and not just having another demonstration project, but really how we can improve deployment. So we are working on this. So watch out. There will be announcement. And we also work with investors. And again, we want to create an action with investors. And we hope with these three groups that we will actually get a better environment to and have deploy innovations and create a virtual cycle in the innovation space, in the water sector. It's very ambitious. We just had actually an event during the Green Week. I don't know if everybody knows what Green Week is, but every year DG Environment organizes a Green Week event where we actually talk about different environmental issues. And this year it was dedicated to water resilience. So as an accelerator, we had a very good event it was very well attended, also with great speakers from different areas. And we came up with 10 recommendations.
Okay, that sounds really, really interesting.
We came up with 10 recommendations. And if I give you very concrete ones, and I take my notes now, one of them is we would like actually the future European R&D projects in Northern Europe to allocate 1% of the budget to create spin-offs.
Okay.
So when you have a disruptive technology, what we're asking for is, if relevant, of course, because creating spin-off is not, an objective in itself,
Hmm.
but if we have disruptive technologies, part of the budget, which are quite substantial for those of us, who have been involved in European projects, we would like 1% to be allocated to creating spin-offs.
Which makes sense, right? In order to perpetrate the innovation, yeah, or
Yes.
in water.
Um, Another interesting recommendation which came out of the event was we need more product thinkers. When we were talking about the product market fit. So we need tech thinkers, but we need product thinkers as well
W-
in
w-
the water space.
we need people that can connect the points.
Yes.
But can I ask something
Mhm.
on that? Do you think that we need more talent in the water space?
We
Do we
need
need to attract more
different,
people?
we need different, um, we need different expertise. And interestingly, this recommendation about the product thinkers came from somebody from Andy Baines, who used to work for Google, Apple, and who created Nest.
Hmm.
Yeah. And so nothing to do with water,
Hmm.
but that's his reflection on working with us in the accelerator and on now being involved with us, in different water events and water projects.
My problem from the employee side of you is
Hmm.
that the water sector is considered a low value industry in comparison to other industry activities, and thus the wages are analogous to that fact. So why would someone with this specific high skill set come to serve in the water sector? Should things change within the companies and the money they allocate in order to attract the right people to increase the company value and the water sector in general?
It is becoming a high value because it's not, it's no longer about just, providing drink just. This is very important, so don't take me wrong about drinking water provision. It's not just about this any longer. This is now creating value from a different product. We're talking about wastewater. So it's a whole world of um, uh, uh, creating new value, if you like, from a resource which has been considered so far as very low value. And I know we talk about the value of water, we talk about the fact that the price of water, is very low in some countries, and that we don't value water the way that it should be valued. Nonetheless, I would tend to hope, because I'm an optimistic, that this is changing. And when you see, I mean, something completely different from innovation, but when you see actually the value of the listed companies on the stock exchange, this is a pretty stable. I have invested myself, like in water values, and this is a pretty stable return. So now it's how you translate that into innovation companies. And I would like to see more innovative companies going on stock exchange, for instance, like to create that value, there's a new world actually to invent and to create. And we are only at the beginning of the journey.
I hope to still be there when things get interesting.
Or hopefully it won't be, like in 20 years. I hope
Well,
it's going to be before, and we are working on it. And again, you have many good people in the water sector, so it doesn't mean that the accelerator will solve all the issues. Everybody is trying to do its part. You've got other organizations. We are just trying to do it differently.
I applaud your efforts.
Thank
Gaetan,
you,
I
Christophe.
would like to thank you very much for taking time out of your agenda to speak to us today. It
My
has been a
pleasure.
real pleasure talking to you, and I'm looking forward to see your future initiatives with the WaterTech Accelerator.
I will keep you posted, and it's been a pleasure also, Christos. Thank you so much for having me on your program.
Take care and have a
Thank
nice
you.
day.